What's up guys, I'm here at Ryan's Diesel Service. So in today's video, since I have the expert here, I thought I'd take advantage of this time. We're going to talk about turbo failures and why it's so important that you need to know this. Stay tuned.
Hey guys, I'm Ryan, the owner of Ryan's Diesel Service located in North Prairie, Wisconsin. Some of the services we offer here are truck repair, fleet maintenance. We do a lot of transmission rebuilds. A lot of you guys know I'm in the same building here with my dad, Kodiak truck. He does all the transfer case and differential as well. We do anything from stock reman turbos all the way up to custom modified turbos. As you can see, we do all the machine work here in-house. We've got state-of-the-art brand new Haas machines. That way we know our machine work is going to be spot on, all our tolerances are on, and everything's going to check out.
I would say probably some of the best built turbos on the planet. So make sure you guys check them out. I left that link in the description. Also use my coupon code TruckMaster. It's going to save you guys some pennies. So let's go ahead and get into this video.
So this here, this is a unit that came back as a core. I can almost guarantee you the thrust bearing is more than likely taken out of this unit, because if you actually see here, and you can actually almost hear, this has got a lot of play in it, and it's in and out play. This here is, like I say, a telltale sign of more than likely probably some sort of boost leak or, you know, an overspeed problem. So it's really critical to do those boost leak tests, look at your truck, know what's going on with it, so you don't end up with something like this.
I know that you guys build these things day in and day out, constantly. You see a lot of customers sending in their cores. You know what works and what doesn't. What main failure points happen with these, especially the Garrett turbos? Some
of the failures that we see we'll touch on this video. Getting right into it, one of the big ones we see, everybody loves the sound, is the surging. Basically what that is when you go to accelerate on your truck and you take off and you hear that whooshing noise at the end, right as you lift when it's building boost. Basically what that is, it's the two wheels fighting each other. Yeah, it may sound cool, but that's really hard on a turbo. We've seen guys from performance applications where they've sent their turbos in, say they, you know, bought a box Borg Warner Charger or something, if they got S300, S400, where they send it in for a rebuild if it's a pull truck, where they can't avoid that. It's one of those things that it's really hard on a turbo, and although it sounds really cool, I wouldn't recommend doing that. Another common failure that we see with guys is foreign object damage. What we mean by that could be a couple different things. One, dirty air filters. Keeping your air filter clean is always a must, whether you have a stock or performance unit. They neglect that filter, they don't clean it often enough, they shouldn't be replaced, or they're not replacing it often enough, and you end up having what looks like almost a shotgun blast to the front of your compressor. We've seen a lot of issues with that over the years, and we always tell guys, keep up on stuff like that. The actual insides of the filter, we've had only a couple instances, but the actual internal guts of the filter actually sucked through and actually went through a guy's turbo. But again, it's one of those things that we tell guys, clean air filters, maintaining that stuff. When you guys are doing oil changes, pop it off. If you got a cleanable filter, clean it down then. You know, we even tell guys, get two filters. If you got S and B filter, let's just say for an example, buy two of them. Have one already clean sitting on the garage shelf. When you're doing your oil change, swap the filters around, clean that on. That way you don't have downtime with your truck, and you're able to get back up on the road again. The other things that we've seen, especially like on the VGT Duramax units, a clamp on the front that holds the mouthpiece on will come loose, and we've actually seen them cock a hair, and they'll start sucking debris and crap up in the turbo. We've actually had, there's O-rings on some of the aftermarket mouthpieces. We actually had one guy here, he ended up going, and actually that mouthpiece cocked up. O-ring sucked up and ate it, and it literally, there was chunks, believe it or not, from that little rubber O-ring, there was chunks in the compressor wheel. So we tell guys, be very careful with that. One of the other things to be aware of is oiling issues. Although it's not very common that we see it on the Duramax trucks, that's pretty much most popular units we sell, we do see it from time to time. The one thing that we tell guys on these to look out for, make sure your feed lines are not pinched, make sure you have good flowing. So that's one thing though, when you guys are pulling them, I know we've had plenty of guys call before and ask, hey, can I get this line, or where do I get this line from? Because they bent it or kinked it. Like I say, it's one thing to just definitely make sure when you're, you know, pulling a turbo, putting a turbo back in, you don't kink that line or bend that line. That's going to give you a lot of issue. The other thing to look for is your drain line. Make sure your drain line, when it's going back down into the block, make sure that's good as well too. Make sure it's all free. Believe it or not, I've had a couple guys out there, like when we ship our units out, there's actually plugs we put in the bottom side of the bearing housing to make sure oil doesn't leak out in transit. I've had a couple guys, believe it or not, forget to pull that red plug out or the black cap or whatever we're putting in it at that point in time, whatever we can get, and they go to start their trucks, and next thing you know, they got oil puking out the tailpipe and puking out everywhere else. It's one thing to be, you know, very aware of, you know, make sure that everything is free, pay attention to what you're doing. Another thing I should note too, back to the feed line, make sure when you have that turbo out, let's say you're doing that overhaul or putting that different one in, whatever you may be doing, make sure you check where that oil line is attached to down at the block. That's actually drawing off one of the cam bearings. You should be able to pull that line off, look right down in the center there, and see that hole down in there. If, let's say, you can't see a hole down on that bearing, that means that bearing's spun and it's cutting off oil. I've had a couple guys that have bought units from us where they had a failure, the unit blew up, they bought a brand new turbo, and they call back, oh, it only lasted 5 miles. Usually turbos don't blow up that quick if there's not other underlying issues. On both those instances with both those guys, they ended up actually having the cam bearing spun, and they had way bigger issues than a turbo at that point in time. PCV system. This is by far probably, I would say, top 2 phone calls that we get when guys go, they're in there and they're doing their turbos. Most guys are generally going to do a YBridge kit or a high flow kit, and they're going to reroute the PCV at that point in time. Make sure when you are doing that, it should go from valve cover to valve cover. You should cut it in the center, and if you're not going to go and run 2 separate pieces, you cut it in the center, put a T in there, and have a third drop down. You don't know how many warranties we have had where guys ship their turbos back in because they say the turbo's bad. I put it on, and within 2 minutes of running, it's puking oil out the tailpipe. And then we call and start talking to them, and they ended up connecting their valve cover to valve cover, making excessive crankcase pressure, and next thing you know, they blow the piston ring out in the backside of the turbo. Make sure, if you go in a Duramax truck and you're putting a turbo on and you're doing a whole bunch of other work at that same time, make sure you cut and put that relief in there. Especially when it comes to you start building that truck more and more is going to be heat. Watch that. Be mindful of what your EGTs are. We normally tell guys 1350, you know, consistently. That's kind of where I like to draw the line. Could you push it harder? Sure, absolutely you can. Have I? Absolutely. I have in my own trucks, but keeping longevity, keeping the unit alive, keeping the engine alive in general, always watch your heat, watch what you're doing, pay attention. You know, there's a lot of good companies out there, you know, Edge, Banks, they make monitors that you can put in there. You can set those alerts to start flashing and beeping on the dash. You know, you got their probe system in there, it'll start going off where you know, hey, this thing's running too hot. I need either need to get out of the throttle or do what you need to do to cool the truck off. Important things that we see when the cores are coming back, overspeeding issues. There could be a couple different things that could be causing that overspeed, but one of the most popular things that we see 9 times out of 10 is a boost leak. Guys, I cannot stress enough how important it is to check your truck for boost leaks. Every time there's a truck that comes in the shop behind me here, when these guys are working on these trucks, pre and post, when those trucks leave here, they're doing boost leak tests on them. You don't know how many trucks that we bring in through this shop here before we even lay a finger on anything else and they pull that charge pipe off and run a boost leak test. Do we see that, oh, look at that, this clamp was loose, that's loose, whatever the case may be. You know, for longevity wise, trying to save these units, make sure if you guys are doing this huge amount, you know, immense amount of work to your truck, you know, doing a turbo, doing a YBridge, even if you are just, let's say, doing a turbo, still double check that stuff. I hear a weird whistling noise. It's blowing excessive black smoke, you know, or from a warranty standpoint, guys that call in and go, yeah, my unit exploded. Turbos don't just explode for no reason. There's usually another underlying issue that's going to cause a turbo to explode. 99% of the time, I'd say when we get a core back or we get a turbo back from a warranty standpoint, it's almost a guarantee the thrust is going to be knocked out of it, the thrust collar is going to be knocked out of it, and we're going to either see a turbine wheel that's exploded or a compressor wheel that's exploded. Almost every single time in one of those instances, it always leads back to a boost leak. We start talking with the customer, oh, what else did you do to the truck? Well, how did you do this? Hey, send us some pictures. And we start going through stuff and we go, well, this is how this should be, this is how that should be. And next thing you know, they leave all that stuff alone. Let's say it's a piping issue, they don't have a clamp tight enough. They get it all back together and don't touch any of the clamps that are still there. They run their boost leak test, and next thing you know, you had air hissing out. LB7 trucks, another prime example. If you have factory piping on those LB7 trucks, if you've been around the LB7 game long enough, you'll know there's a very common rub point on the frame. Driver side charge pipe, the hot pipe coming down, it comes down, goes up against the frame by the brake lines, it'll scrub a hole right through the side of that pipe. I've seen some of them, you know, quarter size or bigger that have been rubbed up through there. Guys have no idea, well, the truck still drives fine. And again, you start having these failures.
So myself as a consumer and also just getting into the diesel game and installing turbos, I have learned that the hard way as well. I was one of those guys. And one thing that I've learned is actually how to do a boost leak test, which I will leave a link in the description. I did a full video on exactly how to do it in your garage. It's a very simple test. As long as you have an air compressor, you guys can pretty much do this, and of course have access to a hardware store or something like that. Very inexpensive way to do it. I know there's some kits out there that you could do boost leak tests that go in upwards of like $150. It may look all shiny and nice and great, but you can really save yourself some coin by just going to like a hardware store and buying, you know, a little adapter and a little valve stem.
A lot of write-ups on the if you guys look at the true old school Duramax forums, not like the stuff on Facebook, but actual legit forums, a lot of write-ups on there of how-to DIYs with, you know, just a cap and an air regulator, and you're up and running. So definitely make sure you look at that stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely not rocket science, so check that video out if you want to learn how to do that. And you'll notice a big difference, especially for some of my guys that are pulling trailers, man. You will know a difference. Underpowering, you see the excessive smoke like you talked about, but lag, I mean, just loss of power, bad fuel economy, it is just a bad situation. So, Ryan, I do appreciate all of your insight, knowledge, and words of wisdom to us, and I hope this video was very helpful to you. I appreciate your time as always. We'll see you on the next video. Stay tuned.